All right. That was your performance for the night. Welcome everyone on Zoom and in person. Hi, welcome. My name is Manny. Welcome to our small business here on the corner of 16th and Valencia. Thank you for being here. Before we go any further, on a much more serious note, I just want to take a quick moment of silence for the 13 U.S. Soldiers who were killed today and the still uncounted number of Afghans who were killed. It was a very, very hard way to start the day. All of us here at Manny's have been it's been such a strange day. But I do think it's important for us to acknowledge just how serious that is. So if we can all just take a second and have a moment of silence and think about these folks, their families, the Afghans and the Americans. All right, thank you. We had Senator Warnock here last night, and one of the things he said that was so powerful, I thought, was he talked about January 5th versus January 6th. January 5th was this moment of extreme pride for our country. We were able to elect a Jewish and a Black senator from Georgia, the first time Georgia had ever elected a Black person represented in the Senate. And January 6th, of course, we had this riot. And what he said was that America is both January 5th and January 6th. We hold both of those within us. Some of the things that we should be so proud of, and also some things that we really need to work on. And I think here at Manny's, we try to take it all in, right? We started this day with tragedy. We've had a lot of things happen outside and inside the space today. We have 3 events going on tonight. All of this is part of our experience. We have to hold all of it within ourselves and just try to get through the day and move on to the next one. Can I get an amen? Amen. All right. So you're here at Manny's. It's a civic and political event and gathering space. I just want to say thank you for coming. For whom is it your first time here at Manny's? Raise your hand. Oh my God, all these people, welcome. So the first thing we do here before an event is you just take a second and introduce yourself to someone around you that you do not know. So introduce yourself, exchange names, and just say why you're here. What's something you're excited about? Yeah, Annie, maybe? Annie, Amanda? Amanda, meet Annie.
Oh, I'll get you.
And on Zoom, write in the chat if you're on Zoom, where are you dialing in from? What part of San Francisco? Who are you? Everyone in the Zoom, I want to see you put some things in the chat, where you're dialing in from. What part of the city or the county? Or maybe a different part of the country. We're creating community, y'all. Let me see. Who's here? Come on, type into that chat. All right, Bernal Heights. Yes. All right, great, everyone. So we know who's here. We're a family for the next hour. Manny's also has a nonprofit restaurant run by Farming Hope. So if you've purchased beer, wine, or food, you're supporting, I think, one of the very few nonprofit restaurants in San Francisco. Farming Hope hires and trains formerly homeless and formerly incarcerated individuals, trains them in restaurant and kitchen skills and places them into full-time employment. We're very proud of them. Amen. Thank you. Yes, they're awesome. We will all be closed starting tomorrow morning until September 7th. So honey, we're taking a very much needed mental health break so that we can end this summer. What a summer. What else do I have to say? If you want to take pictures tonight, please do. We love it. Just tag us at Welcome to Manny so we can share it and more people can find out about our events. Normally, this is the time where I plug upcoming events, and I will just say that right after this, there'll be an amazing event with about the importance of live music venues in our city with the leaders of the Independent, the Fillmore and Bill Graham Civic Auditorium. Okay? All right. You guys are here for the Drag Democracy Hour, right? Yeah. Right? No, just kidding. Let's welcome to the stage Phil Ginsburg, the General Manager of Reg & Park.
Hi, Phil. I am just gonna as soon as this is over, I'm gonna go home and I'm gonna call my mother and I'm gonna tell her, I spoke at Manny's tonight, and yesterday he had Senator Warnock, but I'm closing it out before he goes on vacation.
I love that. You have a mic right behind you. I love that. Makes me, you know what? I'm just as excited to talk to you as I was excited to interview Reverend Warnock yesterday. I have a lot of paper around me. First of all, I just want to ask you, Phil, how has your summer been?
I mean, I think as crappy as yours. It started out so optimistically, right? I mean, June, we thought things were going in a certain direction and we were reopening and, there were events and music and we're just not done yet. And so we're navigating, right? I mean, we have had more stuff happening this summer in our parks and there's been more opportunities for us all to kind of enjoy nature and enjoy music and be together, but I'm done with this. I'm kind of fatutz.
You're fatutz with the summer.
Yeah, I'm fatutz.
Yeah. Jim, who is it?
Somebody from Oklahoma.
Someone from Oklahoma. Ooh, you never know. Could be anyone.
They heard I was here, Jim.
Yeah. So what I want to do with you tonight is I want to ask you I want to ask you about what the last 15 months has been like. I want to ask you about what we've learned. This is part of our What We Learned series. I want to ask you about the future, and then I want to get metaphysical, philosophical, spiritual, and deep with you. Okay?
I'm ready.
Are you ready for all that?
I'm ready.
Great. So tell me about your moment when you realized the city was going to get shut down, and how you internalized that as the person who runs, our great open spaces. What was your first thought, and what did you first think how it was going to affect your operation when you realized that the city was going to shelter in place?
There are two big moments actually. One was for about 2 years before anybody had ever heard of COVID or the pandemic. We had been planning to celebrate Golden Gate Park's 150th anniversary, right? The most important park in the country. And we were so excited and did this so right in so many ways. And
Weren't we going to do an event around?
well, yes, on April 4th.
Yeah, we had an event about the 150th.
Yes, that was the last time I was here, I think, one of the last times I was here. April 4th, 2020. I mean, I have lost track of time, which is something else that COVID has done. And I'm really feeling very excited today because what I've accomplished is I'm wearing pants. So that's been good because for the last 18 months, I've been, in shorts and on Zoom. But April 4th, 2020, we were preparing to welcome 150,000 people into the park for 150 different activities, free activities in every corner of the park. And it was going to be spectacular. And, as COVID hit at first, the first rule that came down was no events more than, 5,000 people or this or that or whatever. And there came a point where we're like, oh my God, we have to cancel this. And that was my holy shit moment. And we did, and it was super weird and uncomfortable, and of course the right thing to do. But then the next big moment that hit was I got dragged into a meeting about 12 hours before the San Francisco Unified School District said it was sending everybody home. And it was a meeting with the mayor's chief of staff, our health director, the city's health officer, a few other folks, Maria Sue, who runs our Department of Children, Youth and Family, and they were terrified by this. They had advanced word that this was what was going to happen, and they were terrified by this looming decision because they were really worried about childcare for our emergency responders, our healthcare workers, our police officers, firefighters. And I think this was on a Thursday. And the announcement that the school district was shutting down was going to be on a Friday, if I have this right. And on Thursday, we were asked to stand up emergency childcare for the children of healthcare workers and first responders on the following Monday. That's a tall order. And we worked all weekend. I think Joel Riddell is here from the Recreation and Park Department. Thank you for being here, Joel, who was involved in this. But we had maybe 50, 60 people working all weekend to stand up an emergency childcare operation. Our rec centers were gonna close. And by Tuesday, we were welcoming kids and healthcare workers. So those are my two big, wow, this is very real moments.
So definitely that's a bummer, right? That's like
Yeah.
big bummer. And I have to feel like from all, we've had so many conversations, I think over 20 now, from various leaders in the city about how the pandemic affected what they did, their operation. We still have a couple more coming. But I have to say from the perspective of parks and our open spaces, I think there was so much good that came out about it because it was like such a source of strength and joy and life and love in such a dark time in our city's history. I'll just speak personally. The first couple months of the pandemic, my friends and I, every Sunday, we went on a run through all of Golden Gate Park, down the Great Walkway and back until we really hurt ourselves.
I think I saw you a couple times.
Yes, you did. I think I texted you some pictures, how glorious it was. But in a time that was so scary, our parks, at least for so many of us, and I'll say myself included, gave us the joy that we needed to make it through. So I want to ask you about that. How do you think the pandemic affected the way San Franciscans appreciate and relate to our parks?
I mean, I think San Franciscans have always loved their parks, but park professionals have always understood that parks are more than just happy places. I think many people prior to the pandemic understood parks to be where we go for fun, where we go for birthday parties and jumpy houses and things like that, where parks are really, really sweet amenities. I think the pandemic taught us what those of us who have done this work across the country well understand is that parks are not nice to haves, parks are must haves. Parks are not just places for a birthday party or a jumpy house or a roller skate or a run down the Great Highway. Parks are essential, and they are essential to our physical health and our mental health. And I think the pandemic really opened people's eyes to that in a way, and this is not to say people ever don't, it's not that people take parks for granted, particularly in San Francisco, where I have 880,000 bosses who are all screaming at me at the same time. And I actually never hear them yelling at me. I just hear them loving their parks loudly. But
that is such an adult way to look at that.
well, to be honest, it really comes from the sitcom Parks and Recreation and Leslie Knope, who that was her line. So, I just felt like so I should attribute it. But it is true.
I watched some of that show in preparation for this.
I'm sure you did.
I did.
I was a little disappointed. You were dancing to some song I'd never heard of. And I thought my walk-up song was going to be the theme from Parks and Rec.
It should have been. I flew yesterday from New York and I watched 4 episodes of it on.
It's really brilliant.
It was
It's
very
brilliant.
good. There was a scene where some kids had like thrown a trash bin over in a park and she got a call and they were throwing dog poop bags at each other. And at first she was like, stop. And then she had like a, did people know this episode? She had like a shield and then she's like, wait, this is really fun. And as soon as she got into it, I thought of you.
Well, so you know how there's like all this, there are television programs where my wife Emily's a doctor and like, you'll see a doctor show on television, she'll be like, oh, that's nothing like real life. And then, if you know anybody who's a firefighter or a police officer, and you'll see a show about, fire departments or police departments, they'll be like, oh, that's nothing like my real job. I watch Parks and Rec and I'm like, that's exactly like my real job.
Oh my God, I have so many follow-up questions. I'm not gonna ask them.
I want to say, I will help you and we'll pivot back to the serious for a second. So in addition to people understanding just how essential parks are, that comes with the fact that my staff and your gardeners and your recreation staff and your park rangers and everybody in my organization, the forestry employees, like they're essential, right? They're in the work that for me, I've done this for 12 years in San Francisco, which makes me the second longest tenured parks director in San Francisco history behind a guy by the name of John McLaren, who did it for 65 years. So I'm not going to catch him if you can do the math.
What? That's a long time.
Yeah, it's a long time. But this year, in many respects, as hard of a year as it was, or hard as 18 months as it was for me the most inspiring year to be a parks professional and to work with the men and women in my department, who I think are heroes. Every single day, you talk about, just being able to enjoy Dolores Park or Golden Gate Park, right? As this thing was hitting, we were like, can we keep parks open? Right? Can we keep our restrooms clean? Is it okay? Is it safe? We didn't know anything, right? And all around the country, park systems were closing. And I mentioned the story about the school district and the school district closing and teachers teaching from home and not coming in to teach in schools and kids having to stay home. Well, guess what? Our custodians and our rec staff and our gardeners had the same anxiety that all of us had. And I made the joke about wearing pants for the first time in 18 months, or long pants. But they had to come to work every day. And they had the same health anxieties, the same, anxiousness, the same balancing of home life. They have kids and, all these priorities. But for the men and women that clean our bathrooms, that pick up trash, that keep our parks healthy and safe, that took care of our kids for 18 months. You can't do that on Zoom. You actually have to show up. So they're heroes, and we owe all of them a lot of gratitude.
So how many people work for the department?
2,000.
2,000.
Yeah.
Wow. And how many parks are there in San Francisco?
There are 225 and counting, because we're about to open Francisco Park.
Is that the one that's like over the hill into Viz? That's like kind of semicircle?
Yes, that looks out over, well, it's on Bay.
Bay, okay.
Yeah.
But it's
yeah,
like, it's like Marina, I never.
Yeah, I want me either. So,
I think it's on the other side of the hill.
Yeah.
Somewhere.
I mean, you're here and that park is over there. And then I hang out where the sun doesn't shine, out in the sunset. So out in Golden Gate Park. So I don't, I know that there's like some stores and some bars and stuff over there, but
there's like a new park. It's going to be a semicircle. It's going to be cute.
We have several new park projects. So, 225 and counting. And the thing that I'm most proud about that maybe some people know here, particularly if you've ever heard me speak, because I never pass up an opportunity to remind people of it, is that we are very, 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 very blessed in San Francisco. And these are decisions that have been made over generations. And it's because of the advocacy of San Franciscans. There's a whole lot of reasons what I'm about to tell you exists. So I'm not going to take credit for it. But we were the first and one now of about 2 or 3 cities in the entire country where 100% of us who live here live within a 10-minute walk of a park, right? So the average nationally is about 55% of Americans live within a 10-minute walk of a park. 100% of us. And by the way, for those of you who, like me, are always kind of New York, San Francisco, New York, San Francisco, New York isn't even close. So take that.
Yeah.
Yankees and Mets fans.
Yeah, New York. Just because your boys are cuter than ours. Just because your gyms are better. You make better cocktails.
Well, they have better bagels too. If we're really going.
Have you had our bagels?
Manny's bagels?
Yeah.
I think I need to. Where do we sort? Where do we make our Manny's
No,
bagels
we don't.
in
We get
house?
midnight.
Where are we
bagels.
sourcing them
They're
from?
Midnight bagels.
Because you have something going on at 7 tonight?
Yes.
Because I could, if you guys want, I could talk for 2.5 hours about bagels.
No. I wanted to ask quickly, going back to like how your workforce during COVID, and then we're going to get to the future. We were talking, Tomas and I were talking before this. Like, did you have to add more staff because more people were coming to the parks, or did you see a net increase in total park attendance, because a lot of folks left the city, folks were sheltering in place.
Yeah, I mean,
But also people were like using the parks more because there was nowhere else to go.
yeah, we were the only game in town. There was no
Right.
opportunity to add more staff, although there was a point where the city operated very differently. And at some point, this story will be told. And I know you had Mary Ellen Carroll here, who, by the way, was also in the room with me when we were asked to stand up emergency childcare, which, by the way, evolved into a pop-up school district for a year for our most underserved kids. I mean, we educated about 2,500 of SFUSD's most vulnerable children for an entire school year.
Sorry, just to interrupt you
But-
right there. So someone should write a book about what the city had to do to get through this.
I think so, because you may not realize this, but the entire system of government changed, right? Like, this whole, emergency management system was all very different. I mean, the way I ran my department was very different. We all stopped having the same titles and positions, and certain people, became incredibly critical. I mean, pre-pandemic, I have had somebody who was responsible for health and safety, and sure, health and safety is always important in a parks department, and you process workers' comp claims, and you do trainings on workplace safety, for those of you who are HR geeks, Lauren. But during the pandemic, our health and safety worker who his team was responsible for contact tracing when somebody was positive, whether it was a member of our staff or a member of the public, and had to review all these plans. Anything that happened in a park happened, almost anything that happened in a park over the last 18 months happened very intentionally and deliberately, with a lot of planning and a lot of review about whether it complied with our health orders, right? So our whole system of government changed. So we were not blessed with, hundreds of new employees, and in fact, quite the opposite. We actually had to do more with less for a variety of reasons that we can get into. Aside, we lost $30 million in our revenue over 18 months. So if you run a small business, Manny, that's a lot. So we had to do more with less, but we relied on help from the sheriff's department, the fire department, the police department. Where we really struggled with was educating people about the importance of social distancing. You remember the circles in Dolores, you remember all the mask requirements. We wanted these activities to go on, and I was constantly battling not just our health officers and our emergency management staff, but also, frankly, the state of California that was imposing regulations. At one point, you may recall, they shut playgrounds, which we successfully fought. And credit to our governor, on the recall. I was able to speak to him directly about that. He was like, "You're right, we're gonna fix this." But for a week, they shut playgrounds, which was the most inequitable, horrible thing, because kids in the Tenderloin don't have the Golden Gate National Park system and can't go to Marin, and can't get up to, nobody's going to Tahoe right now, sadly, for a different reason, but can't get out of the city, and playgrounds were all these families had, in dense neighborhoods, and it was so critical that they stayed open. But we had to constantly prove that we could deliver, that we could keep people safe on soccer fields and basketball courts, and different times, different things. We did have to close. We had to take down the rings at some point because we couldn't get people to comply.
And I think there was a moment too where, I don't know if it was, I heard, maybe someone from the mayor's office called me and was like, "Manny, this isn't recorded." She was like, someone said, "Can you get people to can you talk to the gay beach and tell them to spread out more? Because if you don't, we're gonna close Dolores Park." And I'm like, "You can't do that."
Right. Yeah, you can.
But people were.
But no, if you remember, I was with the mayor and the sisters.
Oh, yeah.
Out at on Gay Beach, and we said, be cool, right?
Yeah.
We had to do that messaging. Well, I think for tennis, we had a campaign called Practice Safe Sets.
I love that.
Because at the time, and some of these rules change. I mean, this was the amazing thing. The rules changed every day.
Yeah.
We have never printed more signs in the entire history of the Recreation and Park Department than we had to print and post over the last 18 months, because the rules changed on us all the time. Oh, you can play doubles. No, you can't play doubles with one set of tennis balls. You have to have 2 sets of tennis balls. And and by the way, our health officers in the health department were heroes, right? I mean, they like this city, even though we're all batutzed and fed up and done with this thing, like our city's done pretty darn well. And kudos to the mayor for some outstanding leadership. And everybody, there's a knock on government that government, people don't care. People are either we don't care, or we're idiots, or we're so siloed that the left hand doesn't talk to the right hand, right? Those are very typical criticisms of government. And
I thought it was a spider, but it was just.
oh, it's fine. It's fine. I mean, I feel like what's that show?
Between two ferns,
Yeah, between two ferns.
But it's between 2 ficuses.
Yeah. Okay. So you hear all that stuff about government, and I would just say, like, I'm so proud of our government for the last 18 months.
So,
Like, we really did pretty good.
Pat on the back, right?
Not you, but I'm just saying,
Yeah.
like,
As the government, we did all right. So I want to get to the future. How can you tell me, with everything you just said, what the department had to do, what the parks had to do, what do you think are going to be any long-lasting, maybe even say permanent changes that you're going to be making to the department that already have been made as a result of what happened over the last 18 months?
well, I mean, if we look outside us right now, we're able to eat outside and feel the pace and the vibrancy, right, of 16th and of Valencia. And like, there are changes that I think are going to be everlasting. So, one of the things that, frankly, I'm interested in, and I think so are you, Commissioner or Director, is, look, cities are laboratories, and it's where we test out how to improve or make changes to urban life that either, that ultimately promote urban density and make it so that people can kind of live and want to be in a city. Because at the end of the day, that's really one of the only ways to save the planet, right? Is to let go of suburban sprawl and really focus on urban density. And so how do you do that? We had to test a lot of things during the pandemic. So JFK, great highways, slow streets, right? These are all programs that were born out of necessity and out of an emergency that I personally think we would be foolish to take a step back. And that is not a universal opinion. And these are very spicy conversations, and we all approach a policy debate from our own lens and from, what's in it for me sometimes. But great cities do great things, and we need to continue to challenge ourselves. One other, during the pandemic, and this is something that I'm very proud of, and we have our much discussed and debated and controversial Ferris wheel, as if we don't have anything more serious to actually work on in this city than a Ferris wheel. But between the Ferris wheel and this new beautiful renovation to the music band shell and the music concourse, with light and sound, where now 3 nights a week and pretty soon 3 days a week and pretty soon it'll be 4, you can see live free music at the band shell. The music concourse and in that area of Golden Gate Park during the pandemic became our new downtown. That was our hub. And the pace and energy and vibrancy, I hope, never goes away from that part of the park. And that's why it was designed back in 1870, right? To be that community center.
Yeah, I think I'm glad you touched on that, because I've thought a lot about it. And in all seriousness, I was in New York for the last week, and they had made a lot of changes over the course of the pandemic.
They also have really good pizza.
They do have really good pizza. And I guess I really wished while I was there, and I wish now with you, that San Franciscans were more comfortable with change. Because I think that's what it comes down to. It comes down to being really, really uncomfortable with things changing. And again, we had a whole session about this earlier, Tomas and I, our head of research in the back. And what I think this comes from is San Franciscans and San Francisco is very precious. We love this place so much because it's beautiful and it's special and it's magical. It is all of those things. I mean, everyone knows this. On a nice day, on a wonderful day, when it's sunny and gorgeous, and you go around San Francisco, it's like the fucking birds are speaking to you and saying like,
Amen.
but they're like, this, it doesn't feel real. And so if you've lived here, and especially if you've lived here for a long time, you really believe in it. And I think sometimes what seems to be happening is, even if the change could be glorious, there's such a discomfort with it. And it makes me sad.
It's funny that you phrased it that way, because, you know, my line when I describe San Francisco to friends and family and people who don't live here, and even some people who do, is we are a progressive city that hates change. How ironic is that, right? We're a progressive city that hates change. And yeah, I agree. I mean, this is a city that, you know, and even if you think about some of the larger problems that we're grappling with, you know, San Francisco has always been a boom bust, boom bust, boom bust. That's been its history. You know, since the gold rush, that's change, right? And this is a city of immigrants, people. And, you know, we have our first Americans that were, you know, really here. Everybody else has come here from someplace else, you know, and we've constantly been reinventing ourselves. And so I find, you know, the resistance to change in this city, the preciousness, to be a bit ironic.
So I mean, we'll just dwell on this for a little bit because it is delicate. So I want to be delicate about it. But as the individual with a staff of 2,000 and a leader in our city who runs our parks and our recreation, like what is your theory of change when it comes to getting folks to be more comfortable with really thinking outside the box and boldly about how we use the spaces that you're responsible for? Because I have to tell you, I was in New York and I was like, let's just fuck shit up. Like, I called Amanda Eakin, who's on the board of SMTA with me. I was a little bit drunk and I'd been biking all over New York and I was like, one-way streets everywhere, bike lanes all over the city, bike racks everywhere. Like, I'm done. Like, let's just do it. Like, no more asking for everyone's permission. Like, let's just fucking do it. Like, I don't care if people get upset. Why don't we just do something big and beautiful? And like, who cares if like a bunch of folks are upset at us? Now, that sounds nice, like drunkenly on the phone in Brooklyn, but is that actually the strategic way to get things done? And I know you've had a lot of battles over the last year and a half, right? To get a Ferris
Last year and a half, over 13 years.
A long time. So like, do you feel like that's just like Pollyannish and like that's not actually going to get stuff done?
I mean, I think you know, it's a really interesting conversation, and you know, far be it for me to have the answer, but like, you know, you've heard the idiom, if you want to go fast, go alone, and if you want to go far, you go together. And so that's on one side of, you know, the spectrum, and on the other side of the spectrum is this disruptor mentality that upon which, you know, a big part of modern day San Francisco was built. Right? We're going to disrupt things. We're just going to change things, and the people will follow, right? And I think both strategies sometimes are necessary, right? I think you have to. There's a great quote. This is going to sound trite, but from a hockey coach in Philadelphia, where I grew up, Fred Shiro, who coached the Philadelphia Flyers. He said the best way to avoid criticism is simply to do nothing. And so, I mean, part of this is recognizing that we are 880,000 unique individuals. We all have our own values, and maybe we're not all like, maybe we should stop demonizing people who think differently than us, but also accept the fact that we're not always going to reach unanimous consent. and let's try stuff, right? I mean, the code word in government, within government, for trying to do something new and exciting and different, it's called the pilot. We're gonna pilot it. We'll just see, it's not permanent, it's just temporary. And you know, it's a strategy to get things done, but it's also a very legitimate approach, right? Like, let's test things. And this is what the pandemic has given us. This is the only silver lining or the only blessing of the pandemic. It has forced us to experiment. It has forced us to innovate. And some stuff we like and maybe some stuff we don't, but at least, you know, we're trying, you know, we're in the game.
Yeah, I just wish my fellow San Franciscans were more okay, like just chill a little bit. Like it's okay to just try some things, see if they work out. It's not going to end the world. I remember, I probably shouldn't say this, but on public comment, we were getting a lot of comment about the slow streets, in particular Sanchez slow streets, and people were like so upset. They're like, there are people, they're coming to my street, they are coming with people, there's like music, and they're hanging out, and it's like, and I'm like, wait, when is the bad thing happening? Like, why are you complaining? And I just wish people were more.
Okay, I have the line for you when next time you're at the diocese.
Well, I'm not allowed to say anything. I just.
No, you can say something at the right point. So has anybody seen the documentary, the Fran Lebowitz documentary?
Yes. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
You ready? Here's the line. Okay, people, pretend it's a city.
Right.
Just pretend it's a city. It's gonna be busy. There's gonna be noise. There's gonna be people. And if you don't want busyness and noise and people and commotion, then don't live in a city.
Yeah, here for that. I love that. So let's just go to let's go to the future, the far future. What do you think because one of the things the pandemic also did was speed up a lot of trends that were already kind of happening, right? Subscription movie services and work from home stuff. Like we kind of like got a window, like what if everything just kind of hyper-tracked in certain ways of life and we had to kind of see what it looked like. So what do you feel like the role of parks are going to be in a city like San Francisco or just cities in general, like 50 and 100 years?
I mean, I actually, well, let's start with the assumption that our parks and our cities are going to be here in 50 and 100 years,
Right.
Because that's actually something serious we need to be thinking about. But without, you know, being too.
Let's assume she's
whatever.
still here.
Yeah.
We're still here.
I mean, work is changing, right? We know this, we can feel this. I'm amazed, and it hasn't been that often that I've been in a room with 50 people or 45 people or however many are here. Thank you for being here. I know Senator Warnock probably had a few more, but it's okay. I think work is changing. I think for those who don't have to be at their jobs, and this is something that's really important to think about, right? You can't have a Manny's totally by Zoom, right? It doesn't work. And I think one of the things that as we process the last year or 18 months of our experience, it is recognizing that we all don't have the luxury of the same ability to work from home, right? I think that's really important to acknowledge from an equity perspective. Our custodians and our gardeners and our rec staff, I could work from home. I could do Zoom meetings, right? And by the way, I worked harder than I've ever worked. No transportation time. It cured me from being late for things. Like I had my 9, my 10, my 11, and there was no travel time. There was nothing that was getting in the way of clicking onto the next meeting. So I think we're going to see the future of work, and unfortunately involves a little bit more of that sort of telecommuting in certain sectors, which makes the social cohesion aspect of parks so much more important, right? And nature so much more important, right? Like
we've all either experienced or know someone who has experienced some serious mental health challenges in the last 18 months, right? Isolation does that, angst, health angst, insecurity, tragedy, sickness, death. Those things all create stress that can result in mental health issues, and parks and nature are the antidote to that. And frankly, I would make the argument that the thing that I would like our elected leaders and policy influencers to really understand is to play the long game on parks, right? You will not see a change necessarily to the tragedy on our streets through substance abuse and mental health issues overnight by investing more in parks, but I guarantee you that in 25 years you will. And I think cities need to take that very seriously. You will not see an overnight change to a planet that is heating up by investing more in parks today. But in 25 years, if we keep investing in urban canopy and habitat restoration, we will. You will not see a change overnight to how safe we feel on our streets if we invest more money in parks tomorrow. But in a generation, we will. And so when you ask me where I think parks are headed, 25, 50, 100 years, if we're smart, we will always remember my greatest fear is, while I want this thing to be over, like as much as anybody in this room, I don't want us to forget. My biggest fear is that we will forget. And we will forget how important our parks have been to our physical and mental health and our sense of social cohesion as a community. And we can't forget, and I think we need to double and triple down on supporting our greatest asset, physical asset in this city.
Yeah. Well, at least everyone in this room, can you raise your hand if you're going to commit to not forgetting how important our parks are and what all things we learned over the last 18 months? It's funny, we started this series and we were like 15 months, the last 15 months, and now here we are. So last question or two, which is outside land, she's happening.
She's happening.
You're going to make sure that continues to happen, right?
We are working on it. I mean,
Hell or high water.
yeah, I mean,
we are, which in this
look,
day and age is literally possible.
As we all know, we also need a party. And so but we need a safe one.
Yeah.
And I'm very pleased, you probably all saw the stories this week, that Another Planet is really come out with a very pretty bold and aggressive policy, a mix of either mandatory vaccinations, and they leave some outlet for circumstances where that's not possible or people can't get their arms around that, at least a negative test within 72 hours. There will be very strict rules in their indoor spaces. And, my hope is, this is the only other thing that we didn't talk about. Like during the last 18 months, there was only so much the rules and the work that my staff did. There's only so much that people can do for us in this response, and we all need to take some sense of personal responsibility about how we keep not just ourselves healthy, but our neighbors healthy. And my hope is that everybody will be able to do that in Golden Gate Park, and still listen to Lizzo.
I'm so excited for Lizzo, for Tame Impala, for all that. Who's going to Outside Lands? Raise their hand. Oh my! It's Halloween weekend.
Halloween weekend.
Okay, we're gonna get to audience questions in just a second. My last question for you is tell me, pandemic's over, all right? Let's bye. What are some things you're really excited about that are coming through the pipeline that we're done thinking about this damn thing? Is there a big new park that you're really excited about, or is there excuse me, like is like hardly strictly 2022 what you're really like, what are you like most excited about over the next year and a half? That's just like your bright golden light at the end of this tunnel.
Well, I think first of all, a lot of this work has continued, right? As we think about our future of our park system, there have been 10 or 15 different ribbon cuttings, even during the pandemic, of projects in our park system. So the work continues. So if you're asking me, to pick out a favorite child, that's a hard thing to do because I really do love all of my 225 children. But the project that I think has the greatest potential to make the most positive impact on San Francisco is at a place called the India Basin, which is along the southern waterfront in the Bayview. It's 1.7 miles of contiguous waterfront open space that historically has either been inaccessible or poorly kept, or has suffered the plight of industry and frankly, the lingering effects of, systemic racism and beyond. And we are investing extraordinary amounts of money. Both you are as taxpayers, the state of California, and the philanthropic community in revitalizing this space. But what makes this a really special project is this effort is being done to strengthen the stability and resiliency of the existing community in the Bayview, and not for who comes next. We will all feel welcome there, and I can't wait till this project is sometime done, and we're doing it in phases, and we hope to be done in 2025 or 2026. But this project is for a community that really deserves it, and the goal of this project is to leverage every single dollar spent to strengthen economic opportunity and close the gap on the social determinants of health and create this incredibly profound, inspirational, joyous, culturally relevant space in the Bayview that I think our city will be very, 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 very proud of. So I'm
Cool.
super excited about that.
Love India Basin.
In the shorter term, I'm really looking forward to the holiday season in Golden Gate Park, where you've seen we've started to do some special things. We've got what we call Uncle John's tree in front of McLaren Lodge, which is that big tree with the lights that are light bulbs from
Yeah.
1940. You know those?
The like
Right?
brightly colored ones.
The multicolored ones, exactly. So that tree has been lit like that for 95 years and will continue to be lit like that. But we've zhuzhed it up a little bit. Many of you got to see Entwined in Peacock Meadow right next to McLaren Lodge. And then this beautiful lighting display on the exterior of the Conservatory of Flowers.
Yeah.
And now as we're taking the party into the music concourse with the amazing sort of lighting and inspiration of both the wheel and the band shell and the music. And there's going to be a few other surprises along JFK. So between Thanksgiving and the New Year, when we say goodbye to this yet another shitty year, we're going to go out with a party and joy and community in Golden Gate Park.
Yeah, hats off to that. Love that. All right, let's get to audience questions. We do not have a wireless mic tonight for some unexpected, mysterious reason. Our wireless mic stand was stolen, or we don't know where it is. So go ahead and ask your question. I'm going to repeat it for Zoom. And for those on Zoom, if you have a question, now is the time to type it in. And Ram, our head of operations, will be monitoring the Zoom. Who's got the first question? Jim, go ahead.
So we've talked a lot about using recycled water in the park. To keep them green and then we have to be in the talked about it, as I said, for a long time. After the point where actually using recycled water.
So the question is, we've been talking a lot about recycled water in the parks and using recycled water. Are we actually at the point where that's what we're using to water our parks?
Pretty soon. So this got delayed a little bit by this pandemic, but because we had hoped to be finished in 2021, but we are about a year away in partnership with PUC from converting to reclaimed or recycled water in Golden Gate Park, and all the way from Sloat all the way to Lincoln Golf Course. It is one of the largest recycled water projects in open space in the country. And that will have the impact of having, I think it's well over 50% of our system on reclaimed or recycled water. It's a big deal. We're very excited about it. It's a very complicated project. Right now, our golf courses, Harding, Lincoln Sharp, all are equipped with the purple pipe, which is to carry recycled water. But once we do Golden Gate Park, which consumes the vast majority of water that we use in our entire park system, we will be well on our way, and really super proud of that project.
All right, next question from the audience. Tomas, go ahead.
Question. What is your department's relationship to transit? So you stated you 100%. Come to one of the other parts. Kind of, you know, with kind of working relationship.
What is the working relationship, or how do you think about the connection between transit and the park system?
So when we talk about sort of equity and access, and then we talk about sort of safe routes to parks, transportation is a big part of that equation. And we talked a little bit about this earlier, one of the sort of another good thing out of necessity that happened during the pandemic is all these silos between different agencies really started kind of melted away. And I hope that also remains. I mean, I was on a Rec and Park, and the Department of Children, Youth and Family were on calls together 3 times a week, and our staffs became one as we delivered safe childcare and safe community learning opportunities for our kids. The same thing is true with the Municipal Transportation Agency. I mean, I talk to Jeff Tumlin now as much as I talk to any department head in the city, and our staffs are talking all the time, and we are all in together on creating safe, more joyous spaces within parks. But to make that a reality, we also have to be able to deliver, accessible routes to parks. And, the wonderful thing about, Director Tumlin is, he understands this implicitly. Like, I mean, this is his DNA. And so we are talking all the time about, through not just MTA and Muni lines, but through bikes and micromobility and taxis, you name it, how we link up different park spaces. Now, the fact is, and this is not just true in San Francisco, this is true anywhere, we are much more likely to use a park that is close to us. That's a fact, right? So, you will see less park usage in Golden Gate Park from people who live more than 10 minutes away or 15 minutes away than you would for people who live adjacent to it. We all use our parks, whether it's to walk a dog or get some exercise or play basketball or go for a picnic, right? There is a difference between your local, hyper-local neighborhood park and a destination park. And that's okay. We can't have destination parks next to every single household in the city, right? It's just not, it wouldn't be destinations, right? And so what we try to do is achieve a balance. And so part of that equity and access conversation is, sure, everybody should be able to enjoy Golden Gate Park or the Presidio, not our jurisdiction, or Chrissy Field or McLaren Park, right? I love McLaren Park. But for me, living in the Sunset, McLaren Park's a little bit of a schlep. So I have to choose when I can get to McLaren Park. By the way, I love India Basin and several parks in the Bay, but they're further, right? So I think part of the equation is making sure that everybody has not just a park, but a high quality park within walking distance, and then to think through how we can augment the ways that people can navigate and get to parks that are a little further from them.
Great, next question, please.
How many parks in the pipeline?
How many parks are in the pipeline?
I think that would depend on what you mean by the pipeline.
planning to be developed in the future?
Well, so we have a really robust capital plan, and thanks to the voters in 2020, we have over $250 million to invest in about 15 or 16 spaces. So those are all in the pipeline. We have a number of spaces where we've been blessed with, some pretty significant philanthropic dollars. So those spaces are in the pipeline. So I mean, it really depends on sort of how we define it, but I would say to anyone, we have a project load for our very overworked capital project managers of about 70 different park projects going on right now. So we are constantly reinventing and reinvigorating our system, and that's to meet emerging and evolving community need, and the fact that this is infrastructure, right? I mean, Annie, I think, where's Annie? I think, oh, there you are. You said something really interesting that stuck with me before we started, which is about, investing in infrastructure is important, right? We have this big conversation going on in Washington right now, right? Parks are both social infrastructure, they create social cohesion, they're the places and spaces where we are all equal and equally welcome, making them perhaps the most democratic institution we've got in government, but they're also hard infrastructure. They're a place where we absorb stormwater, where we clean air, right?
Or in the case of Stone Grove, where that stormwater is calculated.
Yes, or we create suddenly in a given day, welcome to my job, we create new rivers and waterfalls, which is what happened on Monday in our beloved Stern Grove, where we are going to have to remove over 60 trees from the hillside. Now we will replant and we will regenerate that forest, but
I
this
will
was pretty
say,
serious.
I just as a simple plug, while I am very sad about the removal of 60 trees, anyone that had to sit and have their butt go, have mud go through their butt sitting on the steep uphill of Stern Grove, probably was sitting there thinking, this is an area that needs to be rethought anyway.
Well, that is true, except all the work is going on the other side. But there is some thought of leveraging.
That was never comfortable. It was never comfortable up there. You were always
Manny,
getting
you have always told me that you are at one with nature, and sometimes being at one with nature is either sitting in the dirt on a log or a rock.
Hard pass. Hard pass on that one. Not when you're trying to watch a concert. Next question. Annie. Do you have a park dream? Something that if you did.
I mean, I dream about parks all the time, but I'm a little weird that way. But that's a really powerful question. I think on the programmatic side, I would just make sure that we were able to deliver, caring mentors and enrichment programs to every child in the city, 7 days a week, right? This is a city that does not think about or invest in its children enough. And so that is sort of a little bit where my heart is. And I know that that's probably not kind of a meaty enough thing for you, because I understand the question. I think, we have over $1.5 billion continuing of deferred maintenance needs in our system. Our system is vast and large, and it's 150 years old, so we constantly have to reinvent it. So we don't have all the resources to do everything that we would like. I would also get to this, something that Thomas raised, which is the transportation equity. I would like to make it so that anybody could get to any space in our city or participate in any program where transportation was not the barrier.
I'm thinking like a moat around Golden Gate Park.
Well, actually, so
With like,
let's go
like
deeper.
a foot with albino.
I have a dream at India Basin, which I told you
Is that what you
about.
were going for? You're going for something like that?
I've got one of those. I've got your moat.
Okay, with
Okay.
albino alligators only.
I've got your moat idea. So at India Basin, this beautiful, amazing waterfront space that has so much potential. There are 2,500 units of public and affordable housing that live, if you know this area, up a steep hill. So again, access is challenging, particularly for for older people or for people with mobility, needs or impairments. And we've talked a lot about, how we can make it really easy for people to go from the neighborhood into the park. And we're going to try to raise money to have a shuttle that will augment MTA's investments that will, get people around. But what I really want there is a funicular. And I want a funicular that's big sort of cable wire that has this beautiful spot at the top of the hill, which is a community space that has great views and people can congregate, and then they can get on this funicular and go down into the park and then go back up the hill. How's that?
I love that. Let's get one or two more questions from the audience or from Zoom. Zoom is content. Go ahead, Chris. It was Chris, right?
Yeah.
Fuck.
Oh,
Jeff.
I was fortunate to be able to vote at a park on my block. And really curious, what's the process of setting up all those votes?
You said you were very fortunate to be able to what?
To vote
You were able to vote on a park.
at a park
At a park or?
Oh, you were able
for
to
a park?
vote, you mean
Yeah.
during an election?
during an election.
Oh, that's
Got
cool.
it, got it. Well, so the Department of
Jeff.
Elections, for every election cycle, they have a formula for making sure that there are voting places that are accessible, right? So, another pandemic thing is you can now vote in your kitchen, right? So I prefer to go to a polling station because that's just my own personal sort of, I love that part of democracy. I love going to Jefferson Elementary School or to my local fire station every year and actually voting there. But we hosted several polling stations in various parks and in our rec centers. So we really, we make our spaces available. We understand that this is the most important and highest civic need. And so when the Department of Elections tells us, hey, do you have space in this neighborhood or in this precinct? We always say yes.
Hey, do you think we should be building high-rise housing on park space, parkland?
Well, I mean, not necessarily on parkland, but I think the having more density near parks. Now, there is a trick here with shadows, right? Because sunlight matters to people, and there's a big conversation about, when a new development shadows a park, people feel like something's being taken away from them. So there's a very complicated balancing act there, but there are some spaces where I have felt, Gene Friend Rec Center in Soma is an example of a space where imagine 2 or 3 really amazing floors of recreational amenities that opened up into a park space, but then floors 4 through 15 were affordable housing.
But how does?
That'd be really cool, right? I feel like
Park does it, doesn't it? There's all these high rises around Central Park.
a different type of high rise, right? Around Central Park. And they're not in the park, they're adjacent to the park.
Yeah.
I do think what is interesting about, there were planning decisions that, maybe we like, maybe we're regretting today, but there are mostly only single family houses surrounding Golden Gate Park. You don't have the same kind of density. There are some apartment buildings and, and multi-unit stuff, but it doesn't look or feel like Central Park. That's very, it's just different. And these were decisions that, that the city is responsible for making over 150 years. The city's always been confused about density, right? And, on the west side, there is none. And there needs to be.
Oh, God. So much to do. Let's get one last question. Jupiter, How you doing? Good. What park did you spend the most time in over the pandemic? Dolo?
I used to live down the street.
Yeah.
Always used to play in a circle.
Uh-huh.
And just,
Was there a preferred circle?
yes, northwest, about 37 degrees.
Do you guys like the circles?
I love the circle.
I'm pretty proud of that, actually.
I love
It
the
wasn't our idea. There was one park in New York City and only one that somebody sent me a picture or image from. And Jill, do you remember? I'm spacing it. And I was like, yes, that's like, like imitation is the highest form of flattery, right? Best practices are about copying other people's good ideas sometimes. And I'm very, in terms of innovation, I was super proud of that. We called the circles behavioral art. That was the term, where we tried through art, through the circles, we try to inspire healthy behavior.
Okay, so here's what's gonna happen. I'm gonna ask one last question, and then we have our 5-minute breakout discussion groups, where you guys are gonna get into groups of 4. There's a prompt question, you guys are gonna discuss it in groups of 4. And then you're gonna stay, because immediately after that discussion, those discussion groups, we have our next event with the general manager of Bill Graham Civic Auditorium, who's over there in the back, Casey, who's so excited to.
What's up, Casey?
To meet you. And the individual that runs the Independent as well. And Ben Blyman, who runs the Entertainment Commission. And so it's gonna be a really amazing follow-up conversation about music venues. So you can't leave, is what I'm trying to say. So my last question is this, and I think about this sometime as a small business owner, and it is a small business, but over the course of just today, all these things happened in my business that I don't even know about. People had tough conversations, good conversations. Maybe they founded their first department in San Francisco. Maybe they found out that they got the job they've always wanted, or that they didn't get the job that they wanted. That's the most amazing thing about owning physical space or being responsible for physical space is the entropy, the chemistry, the mystery of what happens in spaces in our world, right? And I think it's magic and beautiful. You are the manager of 224 parks. And on any given day, people are finding love, ending love, deciding to change their careers. This morning, I was in Dolores Park very early with my best friend, talking about this last week in New York and all the things that happened and processing it and trying to understand what did it all mean? And all these things are happening at the same time in this massive system that you're responsible for. So I just want to ask you, I want to lead this conversation is do you get that? And how do you think about that? And as you move through the day, how do you internalize that responsibility? And how do you let it inform your work?
I so get that. I get that deeply because I'm a human being that has those experiences in our parks too. For many years I ran every day in Golden Gate Park, often, with my wife, sometimes by myself. It is where I, work out problems in my head, or work out problems in my head. It's where I've taught my kids to ride a bike. It's where I've watched them grow up. It's where I've thought about my job. It's where I've thought about my parents. It's where I've thought about my life and my friends. I understand this, deeply, and I will double down on the existential nature of your conversation, of your remarks, because every day that's happening. But think about the fact that these types of, conversations or thoughts or life-altering reflections have been happening in parks all over the city for 150 years, for generations and generations. So, we believe in ghosts. There are ghosts in those forests that have their own stories. I like to say that Golden Gate Park is so important because for 150 years, it's been the keeper of San Francisco's story more than anything else. And so it is super humbling. I also say it's not burdensome because our park system has been around for 150 years. It'll be around for 150 years, God willing, if we take care of our planet.
This is
And well beyond me. I have a small moment, and my staff, all of us, we have a small moment in time to care for and steward these treasured spaces. And we give, we're just borrowing them from our kids, right? So, we have a small moment in time and we all need to do our part. But it is, I really believe this, that it is the power of nature and the power of these democratic spaces where we can all be the same, where we all come from different places. We're different races, we're different religions, we're different sexual orientations. We have, different economic stories. But if you're hanging out in Dolores Park, you're just somebody who's hanging out in Dolores Park. And that's a super powerful thing. And there's nothing I can do to screw that up. So that helps me sleep at night.
Final round of applause for Ginsburg, General Manager of Rec and Park. Such a great conversation. I had to pee the whole time.
Me too.
So I'm dying up here. So before y'all leave, please find a group of four, preferably 4 people you don't know, 5 minutes. That's all this is. I want you to answer the question. Talk about your favorite memory over the last 18 months in a park. Something that happened, something that occurred in a park that you really, really loved. So but find a group of 4, it's 4 right here, and then stick around for the next event on the importance of live music venues in our city. Thanks so much, everyone, and enjoy the conversation. But I need to pee.
Me too.
Hey, sir. Well, how you doing? Good, man. I knew you were gonna be getting. Yeah.